When you work with the target calculation syntax, you should always use this reference syntax here. First you refer to columns, then rows, then measures within a crosstab, and always like that. Now, if we have a crosstab like this, we're looking at 3 years of data and 4 product groups here, and also we're looking at 2 measures, revenue and profit. Now, how many rows do we have? We do have 3 because we simply count the number of dimension members, so number of years, and the same goes for rows. So we got 4 rows here: jean shirts, t-shirts and underwear. And then we got those 2 measures, revenue and profit, being repeated for each of my years, like you see here. Now, knowing this information, we can then start to refer to these columns. So, for example, column-wise, my first column can be referred to as D1, second one as D2, and then the third one as D3. The same goes for rows: D1 for jeans, then D2, D3, and D4. And the measures you got here, revenue and profit, can refer to as M1 and M2. So if you have more measures, it'll become M3, etc. You can actually refer things backwards. So the last column can refer to as D-1, second last D-2, and then D-3, and so on. And the same goes for rows: D-1 for underwear, D-2, D-3, and D-4. Now here we have a full syntax. So we got a function, a sum function first, then a column reference of D1, first column, and a row reference, also D1, meaning the first row, and then an measure reference, M1, which apparently is my revenue reference. So this one will actually equal to revenue for jeans in 2013. First column, first row, first measure. Okay, moving on. This cell over here, 4.3 millions, which is profit for shirts in 2015. What is the syntax for that? Well, you can again use a sum function here. D3 for my third column, D2 for my second row, and then M2 for my profit measure. You could also put it like this. So D-1, last column, D-3, third last row, still M2. Or you can actually put in any combinations of those two if you like. It'll result in the same thing. You can also have relative references. So if I have this single cell here, it can be referred to as D3, third row, column, second row, and second measure, M2. If you put that in as a calculated column, you'll actually get the exact same number all the way down, the same value. Very often, that's not what you want. So instead of using D2 as your row reference, use 0. That's a relative reference. So now we're just relatively pegging values from the current row. Here we got another example. -1 as a relative row reference means if we go to the last cell here and calculate that one, it would go to current row -1 up. So -1 means picking the previous row. You can see we end with undefined because we are going outside the crosstab. So 0 is probably the most commonly used one, but you can also have negative integers for relative references. That means -1 previous row. You can also go 2 rows back if you like, and you can also go to next row, etc. Then we got something called range references. Now you see it here, use a colon. So going from my second column to my third column from 2014 to 2015, look up your M1 measure. So we're looking at revenue. So it's those 2 highlighted blocks of cells that we're looking at. And my row reference is just looking at the current row. So I'm actually just adding those 2 revenue numbers for each of my rows to put into this calculated column here. Another range reference is illustrated by this average calculation down here. These average calculations are of course just based on the numbers of the individual columns here, individual measures. So my column reference 0 here means that this cell and this cell, those 2 cells are based on 2013 data. These 2 cells are based on 2014 data, etc. The last 0 here means current measure. So this cell is based on revenue measure, and this one is based on my profit measure. And now my row reference is, well, the average of D1 colon D-1 from the first row to the last row.